What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking Just with Tigo. My name is Tigo, and as you can see next to me, I have a very, very, very cool and important guest today. In honor of Veterans Day, I wanted to get another person from the military community to come be a part of today's video, and I have Gunny from New York Jets Situation Report. Welcome to the channel, Gunny. How you doing today?
Hey, Tigo, appreciate you for having me, brother. Always a good time with you, man. I'm doing good, Doc. I'm doing good. Can't complain. You know what I'm saying? Got a little bit of break from a lot of the admin stuff I'm doing for work, and I get to go ahead and hang out with you and talk Jets football.
Absolutely, man. It's gonna be a good time. But yeah, like I said, we wanted to do a Veterans Day special. So, guys, remember today is Veterans Day, and go out and if everybody knows a veteran, go say thank you, go say do something. I know that it's not something that veterans necessarily look for, but it's something that's appreciated. It's always something that when I get that text today, it's always like I didn't do it for this, but thanks, I guess, kind of a thing, and that's really it. But today we're going to be talking about the back half of the schedule, right? Earlier this week we talked to Ryan. We did a midseason review from Jets Talk 24/7, and we talked about, what we saw from the New York Jets up until week 10. And then we followed that up with the video from Matt O'Leary talking about our midseason awards. Now we're going to look forward, and we're going to talk about the next 8 games. And me and Gunny are going to go over these 8 games, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to say, who do we think won these? Who do we think are going to win these games, lose these games, why, and what does the end of the season look like? Because I know a lot of teams and a lot of players, fans, including myself, I was cool with 9 or 10 wins. I predicted the Jets to have 10 wins going into this season. But that expectation has changed now that we're 6-3 at the bye and how we've looked. So we're going to go over that. We're going to start. Obviously, we come off of the bye against New England in New England with some rest. Gunny, what do you think that game looks like for the New York Jets?
Honestly, man, I think this is a statement game. I think, and I know we're going to keep hearing the thought process of the next game is the most important game. The next game is the most important game. But in all actuality, I don't know if I can go through another off season not having beaten the Patriots.
Yep.
You know, we got the win against the Bills. We got the win against the Dolphins, right? That's two important components of winning the AFC East is being able to go ahead and beat your division rivals. And the Patriots got the best of us last week, a week before last. And it's not even the Patriots got the best of us. It's that we threw that game away. In the most literal sense, we threw that game away. Um, and I think that we're going to go ahead and see a very, very vengeful New York Jets come out. I think you saw it in the post game presser. There was a lot of what is it? What do you call that thing where it's like subtle, like aggression? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Passive aggressiveness in answering the questions. As mad as those guys were, they tried as hard as they could to maintain their composure and their professionalism. And I love the way Zach Wilson responded in that game, in that post conference. A lot of people said he came off as a little bit arrogant, a little bit too cocky, but I think that showed us somebody who knew that game was lost because of him.
Yep.
He understood that loss was 100% on him. Defense played well enough. The rest of the team did what they had to do. He was the person that didn't show up, and he took it personally. And you want that in your quarterback, a guy who's supposed to be the franchise guy. I expect to see a 180 from what we saw this past matchup against the Patriots at Gillette Stadium.
I totally agree. I think that that first game we saw, the New York Jets were by far and away the better football team.
Facts.
And every single aspect on the D line, in the secondary, on offense, we were better everywhere except for one position, and that was quarterback. Now, I'm not saying that Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi is a better quarterback than Zach Wilson, because I don't believe that. I think Zach Wilson is the better quarterback. He just had a bad game. And I think the thing that really brightens my spot there is saying the fact that, if we look at, and I hate doing this comparison, but it's the most recent comparison, and it's the most realistic comparison that we have when you look at skill sets and things like that. The first Patriots game in year 2 for Josh Allen was the turnaround of his career.
Facts.
And I'm not saying that Zach Wilson is going to be Josh Allen. They're different skill sets. They're different things. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is at a certain point in time, it clicks. And Buffalo Bills Zach Wilson is so by far and away better than every other Zach Wilson we've ever seen. He was making good, smart decisions, quick football. Like, he just played smart. And zero turnover smart Zach can win you games. And I agree with you. I think we can beat New England in Gillette. I think it is going to be personal, not just for the rest of this team, but I think it's specifically going to be personal to Zach, because Zach got the most hate he's ever gotten in his career after that game. And so I agree with you. So we follow that away game in Gillette, and we go back home and we face the really, really hot Chicago Bears. How do you look at the New York Jets matching up against Chicago now that they're kind of a fun story and they can be dynamic on offense?
So Chicago, I won't lie to you, but before the last few weeks, I would have thought, okay, that should be a walk in the park. Again, any given Sunday, any team can be beat. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. I understand that mantra. But in terms of a walk in the park, I'm talking about, like, yeah, we can come in there, make a couple of mistakes, and should still get that win. That's what I mean when I say a walk in the park. But now you see Justin Fields is kind of like hit a corner or something. Like, it's something kind of clicked for him. They've started being a lot smarter with the play calling. They're tailoring the play calling more so to his strengths. And he's still the guy that has a lot of work to do, right? He's still missing a wide open guy. He's got a lot of work to do, but a weapon that he has is his legs. You saw him torch the freaking Miami Dolphins this past week for about 164 something yards.
85 yards.
185, my bad. 185.
He broke the record.
That's not something to sneeze at. Like, that's telling. And yes, we have a better defensive line than the Dolphins, but what does that mean? He runs for 120, he runs for 130, right? Like, you got to look at that and take that into serious consideration. But I'm looking at this game in the same fashion as how we controlled Lamar Jackson in week 1. I think in this situation, that game plan we brought out for Lamar Jackson in week 1 defensively should be very, very similar in execution against freaking Justin Fields, right? And the biggest difference is Lamar Jackson, as much as some of us hate, Lamar Jackson and his inability to throw and whatnot, he's a running back, not a quarterback. He could still make some throws that hurt you. He made some throws that hurt us in that game. I don't think Justin Fields has the weapons to do that. I mean, Chase Claypool doesn't really scare me. I don't think the receivers scare any of our defensive backs. The running game, not really scare. Justin Fields is that team. He is a guy that I think is going to be trying to go 1-11 the way he did against Miami. And I think we can maintain him. And if we can contain him, the Jets should win that game.
I agree yes. I think our game plan should be the opposite of what we did to Miami, right?
Facts.
And because Miami, we were saying we're going to keep Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki. We're going to keep all of their weapons, like their main 3 weapons, under 100 yards combined. Yep. And we did that. Yep. And we forced them to run the ball on us. And they did that effectively. But you saw at the end of the scoreline, we won the game 40-17. And I think Chicago doesn't have weapons on the outside that I think are scary enough for us to really dedicate the resources to protecting the pass game as much as we do against other teams. And so just like you said, if it was up to me, I would stay in nickel coverage the whole game. I would put our corners and safeties out on an island, tell them to cover your guys one-on-one, and then I'm dropping 6 guys in the box every single time. And Quincy Williams, your job is to follow that quarterback, and that's it. If he goes left, you go left. If he goes right, you go right. Because I think Quincy is unfortunately the only linebacker who can keep up with Justin Fields that we have on this team. But that being said, I think also our defensive line is just going to be able to wreak havoc against the Chicago Bears offensive line. Their offensive line has turned the corner, and they're looking really, really interesting. I liked the move of them moving Jenkins into guard. Really like that move for them.
That's helped him out a lot.
Absolutely. Like, that offensive line has gotten better overall, but they haven't faced the best interior defensive lineman in Quinnen Williams yet, and he wrecks your game plan, right? He is that Mike Tyson punch when he talks about everyone's got a great game plan until he punch you in the mouth.
Punch you in the mouth.
And that's what Quinnen Williams does to you. And so there's that. And then the thing that I think really a lot of people aren't talking about is that, like, while the Bears are fun, like, they're going to be facing the New York Jets, in my opinion, as the number 1 defense in the NFL. And that's something that they haven't faced yet. I don't think, at least they faced the top 10 defense and won or looked good. And so we can contain them because Miami, like I said, that Miami game, they scored a bunch of points, but Miami's defense isn't a good defense, right? Adding Bradley Chubb is nice for them and all of that stuff, but they don't have the secondaries. They don't have the safeties. They don't have the linebackers that we have. Even with Bradley Chubb, they don't have the defensive line that we have and the depth that we have. So I think we should be able to wreak havoc. And while Justin Fields is an interesting story, I was walking away with a win there as well. That's 2 wins going into what I think is going to be the biggest game for the New York Jets going into the rest of the back half of the season. And we have to play away at Minnesota against the Vikings. What do you have us doing this game? Because I have this game going one of 2 ways depending on one specific aspect.
All right. So the Minnesota Vikings, they got a good defense.
Yep.
They got a good offense.
Yep.
They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. And as much as I want to be the homer and say these Jets are going to go ahead and just go in there and smack those guys in the mouth, they got a good offensive line. Like they're about as well rounded as I would say a healthy Buffalo Bills team is in terms of for the NFC. Right? They've got playmakers at every level. They can beat you running. They can beat you throwing. Kirk Cousins is an elite game managing quarterback, right? I'm not going to say he's an elite quarterback, but in terms of like managing games, the dude has been one of the most efficient to ever do it, right? So that in itself, without a guy that's going to make mistakes, can cause havoc.
Yep.
I think the Jets get their first L of the second half of the season against the Minnesota Vikings.
I agree with you, but there is a caveat here. Week 13 is being talked about, which is this game against the Vikings, which is being talked about being a game that could be flexed to Sunday Night Football. This might be the first time that the New York Jets are on Sunday Night Football in like 10 years. I think the last time we were on Sunday Night Football was in 2012.
Okay.
Now, if this game stays where it is at 1 o'clock, 1 o'clock Kirk Cousins is an elite quarterback. I'm saying he's elite. With this offense and the way that this team plays, he plays like a top 10 quarterback.
He does.
Now,
he really does.
Primetime Kirk Cousins might be the worst quarterback in the NFL. So if you're telling me the game is at 1 o'clock, I think we lose that game. And that's got to put some respect on the Minnesota Vikings. I think you said it perfectly.
Yes.
Justin Jefferson is a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL.
Yes.
TJ Hawkinson is a top 10 tight end in the NFL. Dalvin Cook might be probably top 15, top 20 running back in the NFL. Darisaw is an argument to be the number 1 left tackle in the NFL.
Yep.
Like they've got excellent players on all over the offense. And that's not even talking about the fact that we haven't talked about their defense. We haven't talked about the fact that Patrick Peterson is looking like a rejuvenated young Patrick Peterson. We're not talking about the fact that Daniil Hunter has revitalized his career, apparently, after having the possibility of being traded. Harrison Smith is turning the corner again and looking relatively good at 33 years old, which is surprising. You know, Zadarius Smith looks like he's having a revitalization of his career. Like, there's a lot of really interesting pieces in what's going on. And I do think that the defense in Minnesota is their weakness. But if that game, and I'm going to count it as a loss right now, if that game happens on primetime and it gets flexed, that's changing. My opinion is changing. Because if we're facing primetime Kirk, Sauce Gardner might get 10 interceptions that game. Like, that's just how primetime Kirk is.
He's not. You're right. I think about it. He has not been good in primetime.
He's never won a game in primetime in his career.
Is it never?
I think he's never. I think the stat is that if they play a Sunday, he's never won a Sunday night football game in his career or a Monday night football game.
Wow.
That's why they just don't flex him.
Wow. Okay.
Also, because Minnesota's been aggressively average for the last couple of years.
Right.
And their new head coach might be in the running for coach of the year because what he's doing in Minnesota. But that's an interesting. So let's Nell. We're 2-1 right now. Okay. We go into Buffalo, week 14. How do you have us looking up against them?
All right. So Buffalo just got their butts handed to them by the Jets this past week. We made Josh Allen look mortal.
Yep.
Like what was once considered to be the MVP favorite has now dropped in the standings based off of what the Jets did to that man. Um, with that said, I think the defenses match up really, really well. They had their entire complement of offensive weapons, so they weren't lacking in that department. Our defense just made it difficult for Josh Allen to operate. The secondary, Sauce Gardner got beat on that one and only play in the beginning, and he said, "Okay, that won't happen again," and it didn't happen again. So I'm a big believer of this game being a very, very competitive one down the stretch. Um, but but they did not have two important pieces in their secondary that I think in Milano that really is the captain of that defense.
Yep.
And I'm not one to make excuses. We got the dub. We beat what was put in front of us. But I do believe Milano back there does make that defense operate a bit more efficiently.
Yep.
It's going to come down to the turnover battle. I think if we win the turnover battle again, it's a win for us. But I think with Milano back there, they're going to make it a little more difficult this time around than it was week one. And again, we barely beat them, right? So I'm gonna be honest with myself. I don't think we sweep the Buffalo Bills.
Nope.
I had us coming into the season getting swept by them.
Yep. Me too.
We got the win from them. I think they come back with a vengeance at Orchard Park and they get that W as well.
I agreed with you. Going into this video, I had that as a W because the reports coming out of Buffalo, and Josh Allen suffered a similar injury and he missed 4 to 6 weeks, and this would be week 5 of that injury. And I said, in the same way that I have the Vikings as a loss if it's at 1 and a win if it's at prime time, it's different with Buffalo because I originally had it, we lose against Josh Allen because I think Josh Allen comes back for a revenge game.
Yeah.
But I think we beat Case Keenum. But now, I don't know if you've seen this. I only saw it in the last, literally like right before you joined for us to do this video. There was a video of Josh Allen on the practice field, and he didn't have a brace on, he didn't have a sleeve on, he didn't have anything on, and then he ran off the field when the media saw it. I think that the Buffalo Bills are doing the smart thing. They've got a really, really difficult matchup against Minnesota this week, and they're playing mind games, and they're having Minnesota waste time not just prepping for Josh Allen, but also prepping for Case Keenum. It's that same gamesmanship that the New York Jets did at the beginning of the year. I think they knew Zach Wilson was going to miss time and a significant amount of time early, like really, really early. Yeah. They didn't tell us until Friday or Saturday, just to make the Ravens have to focus on Zach Wilson, Mike White, Joe Flacco, like who's going to do it. And they had to go watch a bunch of tape to review those guys. But with Josh Allen healthy and the possibility of Matt Milano and Jordan Poyer coming back, that's a much, much better defense. That was the number one defense going into week 9. Right. And the Jets were top 5, and I think the Jets overtook the number 1 spot because no one was hurt on offense.
No,
that offense was full strength, and we put the beating on them there. But I agree. After 4 weeks coming off of the bye, after week 14, I have the Jets going 2-2, them losing 2-2 to Buffalo. We move on to the back half of our schedule, the Detroit Lions. We go into this game. We're now 8-5.
8-5.
How do you have us matching up against the Lions?
I always forget. Are we in Detroit? They had our house?
They are playing us. That's our. We have 2 more home games, and that's it, which is Detroit and Jacksonville, and then we end the season away.
Okay, cool. So Detroit, I won't lie to you, I've been impressed with what their offense has done in the beginning of the season, right? But it almost seems as if once we got enough game tape on how those guys were operating, they've kind of dwindled out. And them trading away Hawkinson was kind of surprising to me because their offense was their bright spot thus far, which means they're looking probably towards getting a couple of premium draft picks come the NFL draft. I'm no longer afraid of the Detroit Lions offense. I wasn't afraid about it to begin with. I did believe our defense could slow them down, but without Hawkinson in there, I really don't even know who. I mean, Amara Sarah, I forget his name, but he's been injured, right? So he's been limited as well, and he cooled off since the hot start. So
they still haven't gotten their first round wide receiver back.
Yeah,
forget
which
his name.
We all knew was going to be Williams.
Yeah. Jameson Williams.
Jameson Williams, fastest freaking wide receiver in the draft. But we all knew that was going to be an issue. We all called it as Jets fans, where he was probably in my book, he was the guy that I had with a bona fide like first round grade. but not worth the risk at receiver, but not worth the risk in terms of his injury. And I was just like, well, he's known for his speed. We don't know what we're going to get back when he comes back. Like, it's not worth it. So, yeah, man, this is a win for the Jets. The Jets are going to go ahead and start a win streak here. And they're going to go ahead and beat the Detroit Lions. I think the defense is going to make life miserable for Jared Goff, and their defense is non-existent. So I do believe it's an opportunity for our offense to actually start racking up some points. Maybe Zach Wilson can rack a couple of touchdowns that game, hit that 300-yard mark in that game as well, make a couple of individual fans happy that they can see him just destroy and annihilate a pretty bad defense. So the Jets come out with a win against Detroit.
Yeah, my notes literally say that the Lions are a mediocre offense and quite possibly one of the worst defenses in the league. And that's just the reality of the situation. While their first round pick, the edge rusher, I forget his name because the moment we didn't draft him. No, because Kayvon went to the Giants.
No. Aiden Hutchinson.
Aiden Hutchinson, that's what it is.
Yeah.
He's been every bit as advertised, as good as he was going to be, but like, I just don't think that matters. The defense is not good. That offense is not good. And then the last bit of notes that I have is that by week 15 and the loss run that they're possibly going to go on, Dan Campbell legitimately might be out of a job at this point. And we might be looking at the Lions with an interim head coach and seriously going and being a part of the Tank Bowl, trying to go for, the Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud sweepstakes, whoever you think quarterback one, or is, I think, will the kid from Kentucky? I don't know. I haven't paid attention to college at all. Yeah, I don't care.
Baby.
Exactly.
I don't care about college football right now.
I think this is going to be our most convincing win. I look at it and I go like 30-10, 30-6. This just might be our most convincing win. And this is going to be the game where people are going to be like, oh, well, Zach only put up 300 yards because it's the Lions. And I'm just going to be like, there's no 100%. Pleasing any of you.
You can't. I realize this, bro. After this Buffalo game, I realized if people hated Zach Wilson to begin with,
they just hate Zach Wilson.
There's no change in their minds.
Because Justin Fields just lost and won AFC and NFC Player of the Week. And now I get why he won.
With running back stats, bro.
I get why he won. He broke the record for quarterback run. I get it. But still, it's just people are harping on the fact of hey, you know what? I like Justin Fields more, and he just ran for 185 yards. And Zach beat the Buffalo Bills, but I don't care because he only threw for 155 yards.
Yep.
And it's just dude, there's no pleasing these guys.
Bypass the 70% completion percent.
Yeah. Who cares about that?
105 freaking QBR. Bypass all that.
Yeah.
No one cares.
Yeah,
and bypass the fact that he beat the Buffalo freaking Bills.
Yeah, he outdueled Josh Allen straight up.
Bro,
can't beat him. Moving on.
I just realized I had
Moving on, because I don't want to talk about the Zach Wilson haters.
It's gonna give us a headache.
Move on to our last home game of the season, the Jacksonville Jaguars. How are you going? How are you feeling about the Jags and where they are right now?
So we just said that the Detroit Lions are going to be the most convincing win that we have thus far in the season, right? As Jets fans, I believe the second most convincing win is going to be against the Jacksonville Jaguars. In this situation, man, I'm actually not gonna lie to you. I think we need to stop throwing around that term generational talent, right? Andrew Luck was a generational talent, right? That dude was generational. We saw it from the moment he got on the field. He made the Colts relevant. Generational talent.
Instantly. With a bad team.
Took a horrible team. Trash team. He made that team relevant, as bad as they were, the moment he stepped up. So we got to stop using the term generational talent.
Yes.
Trevor Lawrence, as much as we all wanted him, I don't see how he would have been a better option right now than Zach.
I didn't. I had Zach as my number one QB.
Did you really?
I did.
I had Trevor as my number one.
I had Zach as my number one.
I had Trevor number one, Justin Fields number two, Zach number three, which is why I'm not a GM.
I had Justin Fields outside of my top five.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I was a big fan of Justin Fields.
Man. Oh, I did not like Justin Fields
off of his athleticism. I hated his slow release. I hated the fact that he did almost seem like processing was a bit slow. But when he made a decision, man, the arm strength, the accuracy in his deep balls, I fell in love with that. But I digress. This is why I'm not a GM in the NFL, because Trevor Lawrence has not looked like he has separated himself from the rest of the pack. Right now, as we look at it, all of the guys drafted that draft are struggling and still trying to find an identity, right? Mac Jones apparently blew up last year, but nobody keeps taking into consideration the fact that during the back half of the year last year, he started to get exposed as not being that good.
They beat the Bills throwing the ball 4 times.
4 freaking times, bro. 4 times.
Like, let's put some context to the Mac Jones year.
Those
Come on.
left. So I think right now Trevor Lawrence is going to be in in a blender. I think our defensive line is going to have a field day again to that kid. And we've realized when he's pressured just how many mistakes he can make. Fumbles, interceptions. He doesn't seem like he's learned from it, you know what I'm saying, at all from last year going into this year. And I see numerous turnovers from the defense, giving Zach Wilson a lot of short fields to work with. This is going to be one of those games where Zach's going to get to that 200 to 250 to 300 range in terms of passing yards. I see another 2 touchdown game. This is going to be the second most convincing win I think we have this year is going to be against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I don't disagree. I think the Jags lack an identity right now. It's one of those things where Trevor Lawrence, I think, just hasn't looked good. I think us putting we put generational on whoever we think is the best player at their position in that draft, and it's just overused. Like a great example of that was last year. People kept calling Kyle Hamilton. I had Kyle Hamilton outside of. I didn't have him as my best safety, and I didn't have him in the top 15. I said if a team takes him in the top 15, it's a mistake. And I've been proven right that not only did the Ravens wasted that pick taking Kyle Hamilton that high, because Petrie, who was taken in the second round by the Texans, is by probably the best safety in the draft, or arguably Jaquan Brisker, who was taken by the Bears.
I like Brisker too.
They're the best safeties of this class. Hamilton has been benched and has been relegated to a slot corner / nickel linebacker role. Like,
Hamilton does look bad, bro.
It's just he hasn't looked like we got it. Tyler Linderbaum has looked great. Does not look like a generational center.
No.
Right? And it's just like, come on. We got to stop using this word for players. Yep. And I agree. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars is another team that we beat because, again, it's essentially the first year of a new system that's completely different than whatever last year was. Yep. And when you have a team that goes through that much adversity, has a really, really bad GM, which they do, and an owner that, like, as much as I like Shad Khan as an individual, he's just not necessarily the greatest owner. I'm a big soccer guy, and you could tell that he's not a great owner because look at what he did to Fulham. Fulham was a Premier League squad when they bought him. Now they're competing in the championship, and they can't get relevant. And Fulham used to be like a London team, like it was a legitimate team that you cared about, and now they're just kind of whatever in the championship, a middle of the and it's just like you can see what ownership does. I agree. I think we beat the Jags going into the last 2 games of our season. We are now, if I've done the situation and the numbers correctly, going into the back half of our season, we are now 10-5 with 2 games left, securely holding, in my predictions, second place in the AFC East right now. We have to travel across the country to play Seattle in Seattle. How do you look at that game? How do you see us going?
Look, I'm very impressed with what Seattle has done, right? There's been a huge debate right now on who's had the better draft. There's a lot of people going back and forth that it was Seattle, it was the Jets, it was Seattle, blah, blah, blah. I'll say this. I think the Seattle Seahawks probably got the most value out of their draft picks this year. I'm going to give that to them all day. Those guys that they've drafted this year are playing well above their draft positions, their draft slots. Respect all day. But the Jets legitimately have all pro players in 3 positions from this draft. Garrett Wilson, freaking Breece Hall, and of course Sauce Gardner. We've got a couple of Pro Bowlers in Jermaine Johnson and freaking right tackle Max Mitchell. Like, that's how good of a draft the Jets have had. And we still don't know what we got, you know what I'm saying, in terms of Clemens. He hasn't gotten enough time, I think, for us to really know what he's at. But the upside is there. We can see the heart is there, the strength is there. His college tape in terms of strength, being able to bully people, you're seeing him do that in the NFL as well. So in terms of the better players, the Jets got the better players in this draft class. Like, it's not even close, right? But I think this is going to be a matchup where it's going to be – because let's be honest, man. You know the Jets are hearing that the Seattle Seahawks got the better draft. You know the Seahawks are hearing that the Jets got the better draft. And those players are going to take it personal. They're going to go ahead and add a little something to it. I think this is the game where you're going to see that come to fruition. But what it boils down to, man, is the defensive line. I think that when creating pressure on the quarterback, Geno Smith, we know what he's capable of. We know what he can do. We also know he can get pressured into making mistakes. He's looked elite thus far this year. Like I don't know who this Geno Smith is because this is
MVP
not the
and
guy
comeback player of the year.
player of the year. Like he's looked that good. But I believe the Jets are also going to have an answer for that. This isn't going to be a blowout game. This is going to be a rumble. I think this is going to be one of those games where, like, if the Jets lost the game, I wouldn't be surprised. I'll be 100% honest. If the Jets lost that game, I wouldn't be surprised. Because Geno Smith is playing, like you just said, at an MVP caliber level. But I still have the Jets winning it by a field goal. It's going to be one that goes on to the wire. The defensive line ultimately is going to be the big impactor of this game. They're going to go ahead and cause some disruption. They're going to slow down Walker, which I think should be very, very important. In terms of the secondary, I mean, they got two receivers that we need to be mindful of, right? We already know this. But I like the matchup with Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed against the receivers. So I think it's going to come down to the defensive line creating havoc, and it's going to come down to the wire. But the Jets win that one by a field goal.
This I think is the first time that we disagree. I have the Jets losing this game, and it has. Okay. I think all of the things that you said makes a lot of sense. I think all of what you said makes a ton of sense. But I think the one thing that you didn't take into consideration, the one thing that sucks when you play Seattle, is traveling to Seattle, playing across the country. Having to travel across the country, especially if that game is a 1 o'clock game or a 4 o'clock game, because I don't think Seattle plays 1 o'clock games. But if it's a 4 o'clock, like it's just the jet lag, that whole situation, like it's a rough place to play in when you have to travel for our East Coast teams. We know that that's a field that also gets loud and has a home field advantage. That's very clearly a stadium that has a home field advantage. So for me, I have the Jets losing, not because I think Seattle is a better team, but because I think all the things that you said, Seattle offensively is playing incredibly well. Their defense is outperforming the value, or not the value, the value of the assets that they put on there. Tariq Woolen is going to barely lose out Defensive Rookie of the Year to Sauce Gardner, and that's a great evaluation there. But I have the Jets, winning this game, and I mean losing this game for that reason. And that's the way that I look at it. It's just traveling to Seattle absolutely sucks. Now, in my world, that puts the Jets at 10-6.
10-6?
10-6. And when I did my rundown, that puts Miami at 9-7. So now it comes down to, you now are ahead, right? Because you have the team at 11-5. And for you now, at this point in time, the Jets don't have to try. No one is going to catch up to the Jets and take their spot in the seeding or anything like that. The Jets can walk into Miami, play their backups in your bracket, and still be fine. They'll make it to the playoffs. They can rest. They've made it. In my situation, it's win and in. Because if the Dolphins win, they both go to 10-7, and because of the divisional record, the Dolphins would end up going into the playoffs. So in your situation where you have us beating Seattle, which I hope that we do, how do you approach the Miami Dolphins game? Do you just rest all your starters, take the L there, or do you actually take that as a serious game? What do you do? What do you think Robert Saleh does in that situation?
So in this situation, I just got to ask you real quick. Is this for the wild card slot or is it for the AFC East?
It's for the wild card. After I saw that Josh Allen is healthy, I still think that defense, once like Matt Milano's supposed to be coming back, Jordan Poyer is supposed to be coming back, that defense is going to really, really carry the Buffalo Bills. And I know that the Bills had lost a step, in my opinion. But I looked at the back half of their schedule outside of the Minnesota game. They really don't face anybody that you look at and you go, yeah, they can beat the Bills, right? It's the Browns without Deshaun Watson still. Then it's Lions, Patriots, Jets, Dolphins, Bears. Bengals can beat them, but I don't think they will. And then Patriots. So which one of those teams outside of like the Jets and the Dolphins and the Bengals, are they really beating? And I think we both agreed that we lose to the Bills, and I don't think Miami sweeps the Bills either.
No.
So it's one of those things where I look at that schedule. The only team that has a real shot at beating the Bills now are the Bengals and the Vikings. And if Josh Allen is playing, I think the Bills beat the Vikings. So that's kind of how I look
When
at
do
it.
they play? Because Deshaun Watson comes back.
Week 11. Deshaun Watson comes back week 12. This is the last Deshaun Watson-less Browns game because, of course, the NFL made it to where Watson's first game back in the NFL is against the Texans.
Is it at home or is it away?
What, the Browns game?
Playing Cleveland.
It's in Buffalo.
Damn it. All right, yeah.
I'm telling you, like I said, like it's one of those things. Like I like the Browns and I like what they're doing. And when Deshaun Watson comes in, hopefully they get better. But like it's just kind of an easy schedule. They've got two real opportunities to lose a game, and that's to the Vikings and that's to the Bengals. And so even if that's the situation and they lose both of the games, now we're talking about a situation where we're competing for the number one spot in the AFC East, right? And it's win and walk away with the AFC East win. So like let me just change that up really quickly. In my again, that's just the way that it would play out.
So, man, if we sat our backups, I feel confident if Joe Flacco is in there. But who's going to be our wide receiver? Man, that's. Nah, I'm going to go with the Jets. They're playing the Dolphins. Even if it's just going to be for the first half, I don't think Coach Saleh is going to bench his guys with an opportunity to go ahead and one. As much as we want to be like, oh man, it's football professionalism. You got to think about that. I also think there's a little bit of personal, you know what I'm saying? Like, not personal. What's the word I'm looking for? A little bit of ego that goes along with being a coach in the NFL, and an ability to go ahead and sweep one of the teams in the AFC East is going to be on the back of the minds of every coach and every player in the Jets locker room, because you know it's going to be in the minds of the fans. And I think we match up extremely well against a healthy Dolphins team.
Yeah,
our healthy defense, I think, could wreak havoc against Tua. I've got a theory. I think the Dolphins lose this Sunday purely based off of what that defensive line can do to disrupt the timing of their offense. And I know if we can see the Cleveland Browns disrupt the timing of this offense, so we can get this W, I feel 1,000 times better about the Jets playing them at the end of the year and getting that dub as well. And 11-5, 10-6, I think no matter what, you're going to see the Jets starters playing against the Dolphins. I do. And if we're 11-5, then you're only going to see them playing for the first half. If we're 10-6, then it's going to be, like you said, a brawl to go ahead and see who gets that last wild card spot. Either way, I got the Jets winning it, and I'm saying that based purely off of the depth we have at defensive line is scary. But also our third and our fourth string defensive backs aren't chumps either. So this means what? We get Bryce Hall to go out there. We get Eccles out there, right? Like we've got some depth in terms of the secondary, but this offense is based so much on timing and rhythm. Right now, they're one of the top offenses scoring in the first half of football in the NFL. They're top 10, I think number 8 offense in terms of scoring points. They're bottom 10 of the NFL in the second half, which shows you, like, as teams adjust to disrupt the rhythm of their throws, like they start to struggle to make things happen in the second half. And they've got 6 games this year where they scored 0 points in the fourth quarter. Bro, I feel good about that game. I do, but I feel great about it if it's Jets versus Dolphins, like our starters versus their stars. I want so badly for Tua to be healthy for that game. Like I'm praying that Tua is healthy for that game, because I guess call it personal. I guess at the end of the day, I'm a little bit agitated with a lot of people who are trying to discredit the beatdown they got 40-17 by assuming Tua would have played defense as well. I guess I don't know, but I get the Jets winning. I don't care. I don't care if it's the starters or the backups. Just win that game close. I don't think it's going to be as much of a beatdown as the first time. If our starters are in there, we win that game by a touchdown. If it's our secondary, I still think our defensive line is so stacked and are going to be so hyped to play in that last game. They're going to disrupt the timing of that offense. And I don't know. Call me a homer. Call me a homer. But I just think that the Jets defense in general matches up so well with what those guys want to do on offense, and we get the dub again.
I like what you're saying. I just think I think you're just a little bit. I think there's a little bit of a homerism there. If we're in my situation where we lose to Seattle and it's winning in, the Jets win. I think the Jets are the better team. I think we have the better quarterback. I think that we've got a more dynamic offense because we actually have a run game and a pass game, and an RPO game. Like, we're not dependent on just one guy to feast and all of that stuff, where Miami is, if Tyreek Hill can't get the ball, you hope to God Jalen Waddle's open, and most of the time he is. But they also, against the two best against the best cornerback trio in the NFL, they looked pedestrian.
They did.
Like, incredibly pedestrian. And so with our defensive line, if it's winning in, the Jets win and we go into the playoffs. Okay. If it's your situation where the game literally doesn't matter, if we lose, we stay at 6. I mean, we stay at the 7 seed. If we win, we stay at the 7 seed. So it literally doesn't matter, and we're playing Streveler in that game, kind of like if that's the situation and that's what's happening, I think we lose that game. And I think that'll just be gamesmanship from Miami trying to lower their draft. Like, it's like I think it'll just be gamesmanship because they don't have a first round pick and they're just trying to manipulate the certain things that are happening in second rounds and all that stuff. And so, like, at that point in time, and they're going to be fighting to end the year above 500, right? You can't end 8-8 anymore. You have to end 9-8, and this game is them competing for 9-8. And so I have the Jets.
You're right.
So
that's a big difference.
So it's one of those things where I look at it and go, if we're in your situation where we beat Seattle, we're 11-5. You don't risk it. You don't risk injury. You don't risk anybody. You need those guys healthy, especially because the first round matchup in this situation would be against the Bills. And you're not going to risk injury when you know that you're going to have to face one of the highest flying offenses in the first round of the playoffs. So if it's my situation, it's win and in. The Jets win that game and they move forward. If it's your situation, I think the Jets lose just because Streveler's not beating the Miami Dolphins. That's just straight up how it is.
No, it would have to be Joe Flacco for me for us to have a chance.
If it's Joe Flacco, even if it's Mike White, it doesn't matter. I don't think we beat. I think Miami's defense is good enough to disrupt Mike Remmers and Obehi because we're resting Dwayne Brown and Max Mitchell. Or, you know what? Fant might get into that game because he's been riding the bench the whole season, right? So maybe Bradley Chubb and George Fant can have a duel there to try to help George Fant get a contract. It's just one of those things where, like, I love our secondary. Like, I love Brandon Echols. I pounded on the table. If you watch back my videos, I said, trade Bryce Hall. We don't need him. We got Brandon Echols. Like, that was literally my thought process. Neither one of those guys is keeping up with a full-speed Tyreek Hill playing to go for above 500 in his first year. As much as I'd love to see Tony Adams and Ashley Davis out in the field, they're not beating Miami there. So in either situation, the New York Jets end the year 11-6 with a wild card playoff berth, matching up against the Buffalo Bills in the first round. For me, I have us losing that game in the first round. I don't think that we're a playoff team yet. I don't think this team is a playoff team yet. I'm not saying that Buffalo is, because I would have Buffalo losing in the next round, ironically. They would, it's just how it is. That being said, how do you feel? The season ends. You're 11-6. We have a playoff berth. We're facing up against the Bills, and we won't go into the playoff picture because then you got to predict every single game and all that stuff. It's too much predicting and trying to figure all that stuff out. But that's because we would end up as the 7 seed in my eyes, and the Buffalo Bills, I think, very clearly have the 2 seed. 7 faces 2. That's just how it is, and that's how I know that. How do you feel? Wrap up that season. You coming off? Like, what was your prediction at the beginning of the year? How does that match up against what you had at the end of the year? How does that look up to you?
My prediction at the beginning of the year was 8 to 9 wins. I thought on a great season, if we got 9 wins, good season if we got 8. I just wanted us to go ahead and get to that point to where we saw progression. And my biggest goal was to see it by the end of the year if Zach Wilson is him or not. I think that was my primary focus. Of anybody who's a logical Jets fan, we looked at it like, okay, I thought from the beginning of the year we had a top 10 defense. I was told I was crazy, but I was like, a lot of guys didn't play last year.
I said elite D line, and I got annihilated.
I got same here, destroyed.
I got straight annihilated.
I said top 10 D, and people laughed at me, called me a homer. I was just like, all right. And I also did a video on how Zach Wilson could do for 4,000 yards. He didn't get to play the first few games, and obviously I was wrong there. I'll bite the bullet. Definitely wrong in regards to that.
Hey, he could put up like 600 yards against the Lions. We don't know that yet.
I don't know. 4,000 yards is a lot to ask him to do from here to the end of the year. But I think ultimately for me, it was about seeing growth, man. I wanted to see this team grow. I wanted to be in the conversation in December where they're talking about like, oh, boom, boom, boom.
In the hunt.
I just wanted to see our names there.
I wanted to be in that graphic.
That's it. Just put me in the graphic when I'm opening up gifts for Christmas. Oh, man, damn, look.
The Jets have a shot.
We have a chance. Even if it wasn't a realistic one, we were in the hunt. That's all I was asking for. But here we are, legitimately kind of in control of our own destiny.
And the legitimate competition for the number 1 spot in the AFC East.
AFC East, which I don't think any of us. Nope, I'm lying. There was one guy, defense wins champions. He's the only person that I saw with a legitimately a whole like article that had the Jets at this point winning this many games. And
I'm off by 1. I had us going into the bye week with 5 wins.
Did you? I had us at 4.
I had us at 5.
4. Yeah.
Because I thought the Broncos were going to be better.
Same here. I thought the Broncos were going to beat us too. I thought we were going
to playing in Denver should be illegal.
Bro, I did destroy the Brees Hall. God, every time I think about it, I get sad.
It's not even about that, dude. Playing in Denver, you can't breathe. No, should be illegal. Should be illegal. You can't play in Denver.
I did a Marine Corps trip out to Denver one time, bro. We went for a Marine Corps run on average 5 to 6 miles, right? So my staff and COIC at the time was like, hey, we're gonna go for a run. I'm like, all right, whatever, cool. Doesn't matter. I can breathe in Texas. It's humid as hell out here. No big deal, bro. We got 3 miles into that thing. The majority of us were like,
just winded.
Discharge me. I'm done. Just kick me out of the military because this is horrible. And we won that game. Shocked me by that. I did not think we were going to win that game. So 11-6, bro, with a playoff berth. If you're a Jets fan and you're not happy about that, I don't know what to tell you, because we did this we'll be the youngest team. I would believe. Actually, yeah, right now we're the youngest team with 6 wins. So we'd be the youngest team right now in terms of youth, like average age, to make the playoffs. Like, we'd be the youngest team to do that. And we did it with a bunch of first-year and second-year players.
Missing guys. Missing key pieces.
Brees Hall, AVT, Becton's out, bro. Like, George Fant didn't show up this year. Like, if you can't look at that and be really pumped about going – I mean, the draft, everything we do in the draft is just going to be adding little freaking pieces, like extra sprinkles on the cake. Because you're talking about a group of men that have grown together. They're young, and now we're going to go into year 3.
And they don't know what they don't know. Dude, Brees Hall did a Lambeau leap.
Yeah.
Right? You're not supposed to do a Lambeau leap if you're not, he did one.
And he did it, bro. Yeah.
Sauce Gardner, unironically and not disrespectfully, wore a cheesehead in Lambeau. You know what I mean? Like, they also went to the Browns and came back in that game, not realizing that the Jets are supposed to lose that game. They're like, no one told them. So I think you're absolutely right, and I think not to me, but I think to a lot of people, the Jets have showed up a year early, and you give them another draft. Like, I think this is the year where you're just like, dude, we make the playoffs. This is awesome. This is fantastic. But I think next year is where we're legitimately talking about after a couple of additions and a couple of changes, and you bring. The Jets are a Super Bowl contending team. The AFC East is going to be incredibly dynamic. And now we're looking at, a really, really interesting things. I will say that, obviously, if we end 11-6, 10-7, whatever it is, making the playoffs, not making the playoffs, ultimately, we would have met my expectations. I had this team before the season going 10-7, and Zach solidifying himself and proving to us that he is our franchise quarterback. And if we're 10-7, if we're 11-6, Zach is going to have at that point proven, at least to me, that he is our franchise quarterback. Now, is he proven that he can be a superstar? Who knows? That's why we play the games. We got 8 more games for us to see what that is. Yeah. But you don't need to be a superstar to win games. I have the San Francisco 49ers winning the Super Bowl this year, and they have Jimmy freaking Garoppolo. The Rams won last year, and they have Matthew Stafford. Those guys are elite game managers, and that's it. The Minnesota Vikings have 1 loss this year with an elite game manager.
Elite game manager.
People need to get this out of the number 2 pick. No. Quarterbacks, that's all that matters. But Gunny, thank you for stopping by. Thank you for everything. Guys, all of his information, his Twitter, his YouTube channel is going to be in the description below. Thank you for hanging out for 50 minutes and doing a Veterans Day special and going over the future of this season. Thank you much for stopping by. Guys, hit the like button on the way out. Go drop a sub on New York Jets Situation Report. He does a lot of really, really cool, fun content, and I love having these conversations. Any last-minute words, things that you want to say to the people before we wrap up?
Hey, appreciate you for having me, brother. Thanks a lot, man. It's always fun talking Jets with you. Hey, Jets fans, again, you should just be ecstatic about where we're at right now and what the future holds for this organization. We've been a poverty franchise, as they say, for a very long time. It's been about a decade plus, but we're on the uptick. And when you start hearing stuff like Von Miller giving us the props he did the other day after that game, it's showing us that we're gaining respect in the league across the board. Now, a lot of freaking analysts and reporters might not think we're doing anything special. A lot of freaking other fan bases, but players in the league are like, damn, these Jets are for real. And at the end of the day, we believe it, the team believes it, and the competitor believes it. It's all that really matters when it comes down to it. So thanks for having me again, Tigo.
Absolutely. Last minute question. I usually ask how we end out the season, but we just did that. If you had to give an MVP midseason award to one player on the New York Jets, who is it?
Come on, bro. Quinnen Williams.
Absolutely. That's
Quinnen
the right
Williams.
answer.
Man, we got to pay that man.
Absolutely. Blank check. You can have whatever you want up to and limited by whatever Aaron Donald is getting paid.
It's yours.
And that's it. Guys, thank you all for stopping by. Thanks for hitting the sub button and the like button on the way out. And last but not least, go Jets.
Let's go.